My name is Nora. I'm 32 years old, and I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who smile the brightest in family photos are the ones hiding the darkest intentions. Last summer, I stood outside my aunt's wedding venue, dressed in my best outfit, clutching an expensive gift, only to be called trash by the security guard my aunt had specifically instructed to keep me out. What happened next turned her dream wedding into a nightmare she'll never forget. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been treated like you don't belong by your own family. Growing up, I always thought Aunt Melissa was the cool aunt. She was my father's younger sister, only 15 years older than me, which made her feel more like an older cousin than an authority figure. When I was little, she would sneak me extra desserts at family gatherings and tell me stories about her adventures traveling the world. My parents, David and Rachel, were hardworking but modest people. Dad worked as a high school teacher and Mom was a nurse. We lived comfortably but never extravagantly. Aunt Melissa, on the other hand, had always chased a different kind of life. She moved to New York City at 21, determined to make it in the fashion industry. For years, she struggled, working as a personal assistant, a boutique manager, anything to stay connected to the world of glamour she desperately wanted to join. Family dinners often featured her complaints about how difficult it was to break into her field, punctuated by subtle digs at my parents' simple lifestyle. "Not everyone can be content teaching algebra to teenagers," she once said to my father, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Everything changed for Melissa 5 years ago when she met Richard Montgomery at a charity gala where she was working as an event coordinator. Richard was 52, a successful real estate developer with a portfolio spanning 3 states. He was also recently divorced from his wife of 25 years. Within 6 months, Melissa and Richard were engaged. The transformation in my aunt was immediate and stark. She traded her bohemian style for designer labels, moved into Richard's penthouse apartment, and slowly began distancing herself from our family. The first sign of trouble came at my parents' 30th anniversary celebration 2 years ago. Melissa arrived late, spent most of the evening on her phone, and left early without saying goodbye to anyone except my grandmother. "She's just busy with wedding planning," my mother made excuses, always the peacemaker. But I had seen the way Melissa looked around the VFW hall where we'd held the party, her nose slightly wrinkled with distaste. As Melissa's wedding date approached, the invitations became a source of family drama. She sent elaborate custom invitations to her new circle of wealthy friends, Richard's business associates, and society connections. Our family received generic printed cards that looked like they came from a discount website. My cousin Jacob pointed it out at Easter dinner. "Did you see the invitations the Hendersons got? They're in leather folders with gold embossing. Ours looks like it was made on Microsoft Word." My grandmother, Patricia, tried to smooth things over as she always did. "Melissa is just overwhelmed with planning." I'm sure she didn't mean anything by it. But even Grandma Pat's voice lacked its usual conviction. The real blow came 3 weeks before the wedding when I called Melissa to discuss my +1. I had been dating Marcus, a pediatric surgeon, for 8 months, and I was excited to introduce him to the extended family. "About that, Nora," Melissa said, her voice taking on that artificial sweetness I'd come to recognize as a warning sign. "I've been meaning to talk to you about the wedding. Richard and I have been reviewing the guest list, and we've decided to keep things really intimate. Just immediate family." I was confused. "But I am immediate family. I'm your niece." "Well, you know what I mean. Close family. And about Marcus, I'm afraid we just can't accommodate +1s for everyone. You understand, right? It's a numbers thing." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Melissa, you have 300 people on your guest list." I saw the seating chart at Grandma's house. "Surely one more person." "The seating chart is finalized, Nora. These things are very delicate. Richard's business associates, the social dynamics, it's complicated. You wouldn't understand." The condescension in her voice made my skin crawl, but I let it go. This was her wedding, after all. If she wanted to keep it small, that was her choice. I told myself I was being oversensitive, that the stress of wedding planning was making her act out of character. The next family gathering revealed I wasn't the only one being excluded. Over dinner at my parents' house, my Uncle Thomas casually mentioned that his 3 kids had also been told they couldn't bring dates. Melissa said the venue has strict capacity limits, he explained, though he looked as unconvinced as I felt. My cousin Sarah, who was engaged herself, was particularly hurt. She invited her yoga instructor's girlfriend, but I can't bring my fiancé? That doesn't make any sense. As we talked, a pattern emerged. All of Richard's side of the family, including distant relatives and business connections, had been given generous +1 allowances. His nephew was bringing his girlfriend of 3 months. His business partner was bringing his adult children and their spouses. But our side of the family, my father's side, was being systematically limited and diminished. She's embarrassed by us, my cousin Jacob said bluntly. We're not fancy enough for her new life. My father, ever the optimist, tried to defend his sister. That's not fair, Jacob. Melissa loves this family. She's just trying to navigate a complicated situation with Richard's social circle. But even as he spoke, I could see the doubt in his eyes. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother received a phone call that would change everything. It was from Melissa, and Mom put it on speaker so Dad could hear. Rachel, I need to ask you something delicate, Melissa began. You know how much this wedding means to Richard and me. We're trying to create a certain atmosphere, a certain level of sophistication. My mother's grip tightened on the phone. What are you asking, Melissa? There was a pause, then Melissa's voice came through, careful and calculated. We're implementing a dress code. Black tie optional for Richard's guests, but we're asking our side of the family to be mindful of their attire. Nothing too flashy, nothing that might draw attention. We want everyone to blend in naturally. I watched my mother's face transform from confusion to hurt to anger. You want us to dress down so we don't embarrass you in front of Richard's rich friends. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said, my father interrupted, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. You want your own family to make themselves invisible so your new husband's social circle doesn't know where you came from. The argument that followed was painful to witness. Melissa insisted she was being misunderstood, that she just wanted everyone to be comfortable. My parents accused her of being ashamed of her roots. It ended with Melissa hanging up, and my mother crying at the kitchen table while my father paced the room, his jaw clenched with suppressed rage. I'm not going, he declared. I won't go to a wedding where my own sister treats me like a liability. My mother, ever the peacemaker, eventually convinced him to attend. She's still family, David. She's your baby sister. Whatever she's become, we don't abandon family. Those words would come back to haunt us all. As the wedding date approached, I threw myself into finding the perfect gift and outfit. If Melissa wanted sophisticated, I would show her sophisticated. I spent 2 months' salary on a designer dress, elegant heels, and professional hair and makeup appointments. The gift was equally carefully chosen, a set of vintage crystal champagne flutes I'd found at an estate sale, appraised at $3,000. They were beautiful, timeless, and exactly the kind of thing Melissa had always admired. I had them professionally wrapped and included a heartfelt card about family, love, and new beginnings. Looking back, my determination to prove myself worthy of attending my own aunt's wedding should have been a red flag. But I was so focused on meeting her impossible standards that I couldn't see how toxic the situation had become. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, temperature in the mid-70s. The ceremony was being held at Grandview Estate, an exclusive venue overlooking the river, with a price tag rumored to be close to $200,000. I arrived with my parents at 2:30 p.m. for the 3 p.m. ceremony, wanting to be early and avoid any parking issues. The entrance to Grandview Estate was intimidating. A long, winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges, leading to a gatehouse where security checked arriving guests against a master list. As we pulled up in my father's modest sedan, sandwiched between a Mercedes and a Bentley, I felt the first flutter of anxiety in my stomach. A security guard in a crisp uniform approached my father's window. Name, please. David Anderson, +2. We're the bride's family. The guard consulted his tablet, scrolling for what seemed like an eternity. His expression grew progressively more confused, then concerned. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't see your names on the guest list." My father's face reddened. "That's impossible. We're immediate family. I'm the bride's brother." The guard's expression softened with pity, which somehow made everything worse. "Let me call up to the house." We sat in uncomfortable silence while he spoke into his radio, voices crackling back and forth. Finally, he returned to our window. "I'm very sorry, but I've been instructed that the Anderson family is not permitted entry. Something about a family dispute." "A family dispute," my mother repeated, her voice rising. "We spoke to Melissa yesterday. She confirmed we were coming." By now, cars were backing up behind us, expensive vehicles with impatient drivers. The guard looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm just following my instructions. I'm going to have to ask you to clear the entrance." "We're not going anywhere until we speak to Melissa," my father said, his teacher voice coming out, the one he used when he meant business. "Let me try again," the guard offered, clearly wanting to resolve this situation. But this time, when he called up to the house, his expression changed. He listened, nodded, and returned to our window with a hardness that hadn't been there before. "I've been instructed to tell you that if you don't leave immediately, I'm authorized to call the police for trespassing." The words hung in the air like a slap. My mother made a sound like she'd been physically struck. I saw my father's hands tighten on the steering wheel, his knuckles white. From behind us, a horn honked impatiently. The guard raised his hand apologetically to the waiting cars, then looked back at us with something like sympathy. "Please, folks, don't make this harder than it has to be." That's when I noticed something. In his other hand, partially hidden by his clipboard, was a printed photograph. He saw me looking and shifted uncomfortably, but not before I caught a glimpse. It was us, my parents and me. A photo from last Christmas, clearly taken from social media. My aunt had literally given security our pictures to ensure we'd be turned away. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a miscommunication. Melissa had deliberately planned to humiliate us, to stop us at the gate where everyone could see, where Richard's wealthy friends would witness our rejection and know that we were unworthy of entry into their world. "Ma'am," the guard said to me, noticing I had gotten out of the car, gift in hand. "I'm going to need you to get back in the vehicle. Do you know what's in this box?" I asked him, my voice surprisingly steady. $3,000 worth of crystal. A gift for the bride. From the family she just banned from her wedding. He shifted uncomfortably. Behind us, more horns were honking now. A man in a tuxedo had gotten out of a Porsche, approaching with visible annoyance. "What's the holdup here?" "Just clearing a misunderstanding, sir," the guard said quickly. There's no misunderstanding," I interrupted, my voice carrying. "The bride is ashamed of her own family. She instructed you to turn us away. Isn't that right?" The guard's silence was answer enough. The man in the tuxedo's expression changed from annoyance to uncomfortable recognition that he'd stumbled into a family drama. My mother had gotten out of the car now too, tears streaming down her face. 27 years, she said to no one in particular. "I helped raise that girl. When her mother, David's first wife, left, I stepped in. I was at every school play, every graduation, every heartbreak. And this is how she repays us." "Mom, let's just go," I said gently, putting my arm around her. "No," my father said, getting out of the car with a determination I recognized. He was a teacher, used to dealing with difficult situations, and I could see him shifting into that mode. "Security," he addressed the guard formally, "I understand you're doing your job. But I need you to deliver a message. Tell Melissa that her brother and his family came to her wedding with love and good intentions. Tell her we're leaving now, but she should know what she's done here today and who she's become." The guard nodded, clearly relieved we were leaving peacefully. But I wasn't quite done. I walked to the security gate, set my expensive gift on the ground, and took out my phone. "What are you doing?" my father asked. "Sending a message," I replied, opening my phone's camera. I took photos of us at the gate, of the gift I was leaving behind, of the line of luxury cars stretching back down the driveway. Then I opened the family group chat, the one that included Melissa, Richard, and about 30 extended family members. I typed, "Currently being refused entry to Melissa's wedding despite being confirmed guests. Security has our photos and instructions to keep us out." For those wondering why the Anderson side of the family is so poorly represented today, now you know. We came with love and were met with humiliation. Congratulations, Melissa. You got the sophisticated wedding you wanted. I hope it was worth the family you lost. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I did something that felt simultaneously petty and perfectly justified. I posted one of the photos to Facebook with a simple caption. "When you're not good enough for your own family's wedding. Hashtag class not cash, hashtag family matters. My father drove us home in silence, my mother crying quietly in the passenger seat. I sat in the back, watching my phone explode with messages. Some were from family members at the wedding, shocked by what had happened. Others were from friends, offering support. But the most telling were the messages from other relatives who hadn't attended, revealing they too had been systematically excluded or discouraged from coming. My cousin Sarah, she told me there wasn't enough room, but I can see the venue from her Instagram. There are at least 100 empty seats. Uncle Thomas, she told me the kids couldn't come because it was adults only, but Richard's nephew brought his 6-year-old. Aunt Marie. I was told it was immediate family only, but half of Richard's extended family is there. The pattern was clear and damning. Melissa had methodically excluded or limited her own family while accommodating every request from Richard's side. She lied, manipulated, and ultimately humiliated the people who had loved and supported her for 47 years. Within an hour of my post, the story had been shared hundreds of times. Friends of friends were commenting, media accounts were picking it up, and the hashtag Wedding Gatekeeper was starting to trend locally. But the real firestorm began when the guests inside the wedding started sharing what was happening. Apparently, my group message had been read aloud by several family members to others at their tables. The whispers spread through the reception like wildfire. Richard's business associates, his social circle, everyone began to understand that the bride had banned her own family from attending. My cousin Jacob, who had been allowed to attend only because Richard needed someone to handle valet parking, sent me a video. It showed the reception hall, beautiful and elegant, with Melissa and Richard at the head table. Suddenly, my grandmother, Patricia, stood up. At 82 years old, she commanded attention simply by rising. "Excuse me," her voice carried across the room, surprising strong. "I'd like to make a toast." Richard smiled, clearly expecting a sentimental family tribute. Melissa looked nervous. "To my granddaughter Melissa," Grandma Pat began, "who taught me today that blood means nothing compared to money. Who showed me that the family who loved her, supported her, and believed in her dreams was never good enough for the life she wanted. Who chose to humiliate her own brother at the gates of her wedding rather than let him witness her happiness." The room had gone completely silent. "I raised you better than this, Melissa. Your mother, God rest her soul, would be ashamed. But I'm not just disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in myself for making excuses for your behavior, for telling everyone you were just stressed, just busy, just overwhelmed. The truth is, you've become exactly the kind of person your mother warned you never to be, someone who measures worth by wealth and status by bank accounts." Grandma Pat set down her champagne glass with a definitive clink. "I'm leaving now. And I hope someday you realize what you've lost today isn't just your family's presence. It's their respect, their trust, and their love. Money can't buy those back." She walked out, and according to Jacob's video, at least 20 other family members followed her. The exodus was silent but devastating, leaving obvious gaps in the seating arrangement and whispers erupting among Richard's guests. My phone rang. It was Melissa, her voice shaking with what I initially thought was anger, but soon recognized as panic. "Nora, what have you done? You've ruined everything. You've embarrassed me in front of everyone. How could you?" The audacity of her question left me momentarily speechless. How could I? I finally managed. Melissa, you had security turn us away with our picture. You banned your own family from your wedding. And somehow I'm the villain. You don't understand, she said, and now I could hear she was crying. Richard's partners, his friends, they have expectations. They needed to see a certain kind of wedding, a certain kind of family. I was trying to protect you from feeling out of place. Protect us? I repeated incredulously. You had us stopped at the gate like criminals. You let us drive 40 miles, get dressed up, buy expensive gifts, only to be humiliated in front of a security guard and a line of luxury cars. That's not protection, Melissa. That's cruelty. I didn't mean for it to happen like that, she said weakly. I told them to call me if you showed up. I was going to explain it to you privately. Explain what? That we're too poor, too ordinary, too embarrassing to be seen at your fancy wedding? That after 32 years of being your niece, I'm suddenly not good enough to double you. Itness, you say? I do. There was a long silence. Then Melissa said something that revealed just how deeply she'd lost her way. You could have dressed better. Fit in more. Made an effort to understand what kind of event this was. I spent 2 months' salary on my dress, I told her, my voice cold. I bought you $3,000 worth of vintage crystal. I did everything possible to meet your impossible standards. But here's what I finally understand, Melissa. There was nothing I could have done. You didn't want us there, period. You wanted to erase where you came from, pretend you were born into Richard's world instead of ours. And you were willing to sacrifice your entire family to maintain that illusion. I hung up before she could respond. Over the next several hours, my phone became a portal into the unfolding disaster of Melissa's wedding. Guests who'd witnessed the scene were posting about it. Local media outlets were calling my family for comments. The story had struck a nerve, highlighting themes of family betrayal, class discrimination, and the cost of social climbing. The next morning, I woke to find my original post had been shared over 10,000 times. News outlets were running stories with headlines like "Bride Bans Family from Wedding," "Internet Responds," and "When Money Divides, a Wedding Day Betrayal." But it was the message from Richard's ex-wife that truly drove home the consequences of Melissa's actions. I'm sorry for what happened to you and your family, she wrote. I wanted you to know that several of Richard's business partners called him this morning. They're reassessing their associations with someone who treats family with such disregard. One of them told Richard that anyone who could be that calculating with their own blood would have no qualms betraying business partners. They're pulling out of 3 major deals. The message continued, I'm not happy about Richard's pain, despite our divorce. But I think you should know that Melissa's actions are having real consequences beyond the emotional damage. Their perfect wedding is costing them far more than the $200,000 they spent on it. 3 days after the wedding, my father received a letter from Melissa. It was handwritten, 6 pages long, and arrived with no return address. I sat with my parents as Dad read it aloud, his voice occasionally breaking with emotion. Melissa wrote about the pressure she'd felt to fit into Richard's world, about her fear that his family and friends would judge her background, about her desperate need to be seen as sophisticated and worthy. She wrote about how she'd convinced herself that limiting her family's presence was the right thing to do, that it would prevent uncomfortable situations and awkward questions. But she also wrote about standing in her empty reception hall after 20 family members had walked out, looking at the carefully arranged tables with their place cards for people who'd never arrived, the expensive floral arrangements surrounding empty chairs. She wrote about Richard's business partners pulling out of deals, about the social circle that had suddenly grown cold, about her own realization that in trying to buy acceptance, she'd lost something priceless. I don't expect forgiveness, the letter concluded. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I understand now what I've done. I traded authentic love for artificial acceptance. I traded people who'd known and supported me my entire life for people who only valued me for the image I could project. And now I have neither. The society friends have dropped me because I'm an embarrassment. My own family won't speak to me because I betrayed them. I'm left with Richard, who's furious about his damaged business relationships and a wedding album full of photos that will always remind me of the worst thing I ever did. My mother cried as Dad finished reading. Not tears of sadness, but tears of complicated grief for the girl Melissa had been and the woman she'd become. 6 months have passed since that day at the gate. The fallout from Melissa's wedding continues to ripple through our family and her social circle. Richard's business has recovered somewhat, though he lost 3 major partnerships permanently. Their marriage, I'm told, is strained. Melissa has tried multiple times to apologize in person, but my father refuses to see her. My mother has met with her twice for coffee, though she's firm about maintaining boundaries. Grandma Pat, who lived through the Depression and always valued character over capital, has been the most forgiving. Life is too short to carry hatred, she told me last month. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean letting someone back into position to hurt you again. I've found unexpected peace in the whole experience. The incident clarified something important. I don't need to prove my worth to anyone, especially not family members who should value me regardless of my income, address, or social connections. The real gift wasn't the crystal champagne flutes I left at that gate. It was the clarity that came from seeing Melissa's true priorities and recognizing that her choices said everything about her and nothing about our worth as people. I still struggle sometimes with feelings of hurt and betrayal. But I've also connected more deeply with the family members who walked out that day, who chose solidarity over social climbing, who reminded me that real class has nothing to do with money. If you've ever been made to feel less than by people who should lift you up, remember this: their inability to value you is their failure, not yours. Your worth isn't determined by who includes or excludes you, but by how you treat others and the values you uphold. What would you have done in this situation? Have you ever been betrayed by family during what should have been a celebration? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be feeling alone in their struggles. Remember, true family is about love and respect, not status and appearances. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it gives you the courage to stand up for your own worth, no matter who tries to diminish it.